Thank you.
Our next presentation is going to be from the committee opposed to the Poinciana Incorporation. Mr. Jeff Goldmacher will be presenting on their behalf.
Good afternoon. As Representative LaRosa said, my name is Jeff Goldmacher. I'm the chairman for the committee opposed to Poinciana Incorporation, or called COPI. The COPI and the representatives, the residents that we represent, respectfully request that you reject this feasibility study, as it is not a feasibility study, it's a marketing and sales, and it doesn't meet the requirements of Florida State Statute 165 to be considered a feasibility study. I know you've all received my rebuttal to the feasibility study. I know that the Pro Corporation people have it because they pointed up right there. I just want to go over a few of the points that I feel were important to bring up from what was in that rebuttal. According to 165.041, paragraph 1B, a feasibility study shall contain the following. Subparagraph 1, the general location of territory subject to boundary change and a map of the area which identifies the proposed change. There's no meets and bounds description in that feasibility study. All they do is refer to documents that have been filed in both Polk and Osceola County. Those documents have been changed so many times since they were first filed 40 years ago, and it's still subject to change. So they have no concrete definition of what the Poinciana city will actually be. Subparagraph 3A, a list of the current land use designations applied to the subject area in the county comprehensive plan. Again, they have no list. They just refer to documents. You have to go to another document and you have to do your homework. That's something that's supposed to be in the feasibility study, according to the state statute. 3B, a list of the current county zoning designations applied to the subject area. Not there. Again, go to the county documents. 3C, a general statement of proposed land use characteristics of the area. Nothing. It's missing it. That's another minus to the feasibility study. 3D, a description of development being proposed for the territory, if any, and a statement of when actual development is expected to begin, if known. They don't even talk about any development in the whole feasibility study. They're not even looking into that. Paragraph 4, a list of all the public agencies such as local government, school districts, and special districts whose current boundaries falls within the boundary of the territory proposed. Well, they have a list in there. They list the Polk County Library. There is no Polk County Library. There's an interlocal agreement with Polk and Osceola for the Polk County residents to use the Osceola Library, but there's no Polk County Library. They don't talk about in the feasibility study, which they happen to mention today for the first time, that there are other small HOAs within Poinciana. That's not mentioned. But even more importantly, there's a CFD, a Common Facilities District, operating within the center of Poinciana. Happens to operate within Cypress Woods, a community within Poinciana. It's not mentioned. What's going to happen to that? They don't talk about that at all. They haven't done their homework or research to know all this stuff to put it in there, to put together a good feasibility study. Subparagraph 5, a list of current services being provided within proposed incorporation, including but not limited to water, sewer, solid waste, transportation, public works, law, fire and rescue, zoning, street, lighting, parks, recreation, library and cultural facilities, and estimated cost. That's right there in the statutes. Do you see that in the feasibility study that you have in front of you? I didn't. They didn't look into that. They don't list everything, and they don't list what the cost is. Subparagraph 8, evidence of fiscal capacity and organizational plan as it relates to the areas seeking incorporation that at a minimum include A, as existing tax base including ad valorem taxable value, utility taxes, sales and use tax, franchise tax, license, permit fees. B, a 5-year operational plan that at a minimum includes proposed staffing, building acquisition and construction, debt issuance and budgets. Not in the feasibility study. On their website, they do take, and you saw it right up there on the screen, the APV budget. That's it. And for 5 years, they increased it by 3%. And that's what they consider their budget. But it doesn't meet the statutory requirements as per 165. This feasibility study is faulty in many ways. 9, data and analysis to support the conclusions that incorporation is necessary and financially feasible, including population projections, population density calculations, and explanation concerning methodologies used for such analysis. It's missing. It's not there. They say, yeah, Poinciana is growing. Made a comment here earlier that vacancies and foreclosures are down. Well, wait. The banks are still holding inventories. Poinciana is still going to get hit with a bunch. I talked to the banks. I know what they're holding. 10, evaluation of the alternatives available in the area to address policy concerns. Not in the feasibility study. Mr. Latham said, hey, over the last 4 years since the last feasibility study was rejected, there were groups talking about it. Okay? Where is the explanation? Why didn't this, that, or the other thing work? Okay? Nothing there in the feasibility study. We're just hearing about now that it was discussed. Those are just some of the faults, and I listed in my rebuttal, a few others. But what I'm also concerned about in this is some of the misleading statements. I think we hit upon it earlier. Representative Comey, I think you keyed on this, that $40,000 figure. They couldn't really tell you if it included the vacant land or not. They kept on using, we got the residential. Well, all those lots are residential. So if that's what they asked the property appraisers for Polk and Osceola County for, that's what they got. So they must have gotten the lots. Lots in Poinciana go from anywhere from $2,900 to $4,500. That's going to bring that average down. But forget about that for a second. Let's go with the 40,000 figure. That means half the homes are below 40,000, the other half above 40,000. And I took trip notices, 12 different homes within each of the communities. And there were homes as low as 25,000. I didn't find that 7,000 home. I got to look again. But there were also homes from 55 to 110,000. At their 3 millage rate, that $110,000 home is going to be paying more than they're paying into the APV. Let's talk about the 3 millage rate. And Mr. Latham's used this, and it's a good strategy. They picked 3 because that's the lowest they could go in order to get revenue sharing. That's fine, that's good. That's a good strategy right there. But it's also a number that they know they could sell to the residents of Poinciana. Because then they could say, look, we're a city, 40,000, you only have $120 city tax, we'll get rid of your APV, $252, you'll save $132. Hey, anybody here in the audience will buy that in a heartbeat. They talked about right now with the city of Kissimmee and the city of St. Cloud have 4.8 or so. Let's keep something in mind. Poinciana is a lot different than the city of Kissimmee and the city of St. Cloud. There's a lot of commercial up there. And those assessments on those commercial property are big bucks. The commercial is keeping the millage rate down for the residents. Poinciana doesn't have that commercial. They don't have the industrial. They might in 5 to 10 years, and maybe in 5 to 10 years, we could look again at becoming a city, because then Poinciana could afford to become a city. Okay? But 3 millage rate isn't, when the average, forget about Kissimmee and St. Cloud, around the state is 5.6, 5.8. And those were for established cities who are also getting grants and also have saved money on things. Okay, and Mr. Latham was right. It's going to be 3-5 years before you qualify for grants. You have to have at least 2 fiscal years before any grant is going to be able to be applied for. For the first time in 4 years, I almost fainted sitting there. I heard Mr. Latham actually say that the HOA is not going to disband. First time in 4 years. I remember back in 2009, Keith, you and I had some pretty big arguments about that when the feasibility study was done by UCF. Well, the HOA isn't going away. The HOA might be able to reduce their assessment if the city takes over some of the things that the HOA does, but the HOA is not going to go away. The HOA is going to hold on to their community center, their offices, the maintenance So where's this new city going to have their city hall? Where are they going to have their commissioners sit? Are they all going to sit around Keith's kitchen table and write things on a paper napkin? I don't know. Community block grants, one of the things that they keep on saying, we don't qualify because we're not a city. Well, that's true, because their HOA isn't their government. Osceola County or Polk County is their government. Osceola County qualifies for community block grants. And you know what? In Osceola County, they can only spend community block grant money in 2 communities. Intercession City, which isn't really a city, they just have the city in the name, and Poinciana. So what's happening? Osceola County is spending $600,000 of their community block grant money to bring Tico down into Poinciana. So all you have to do is hold your county commissioner's feet to the fire and get him to fight for the money that you deserve. You know, they talked about the APV is controlled by the developer. Well, all I saw is Village 1, Village 2, Village 3, Village 5, okay, Village 9. Those are 6, those, don't forget what? Okay, no, I'll get there. Okay, 4 and 6 are developer. Okay, 8 is developer because there's only 28 houses. Okay, that's 3 developers versus 5 residents who live in the village. Then you have one that has no relationship with the developer, but he doesn't live in the village. Okay, and they want to talk about that 85 agreement. The 85 agreement states that the developer can only vote after the residents vote and has to go along with the majority of the residents. So I don't see that as being a developer-controlled APV board. Another thing that they're passing around to the residents is the problem in Poinciana why we have so many empty storefronts is the landlords charge too much for rent. But if we were a city, we could control what they charge for the rent. I don't know. I think I still live in America with free enterprise, and I think I know that the landlord can charge whatever he wants. They also say they complain, and they say to the residents, see, there are no churches on the Polk side of Poinciana because AV Homes, the developer, charges too much for the land. If we were a city, we could control what those land goes for. I still think I live in America. I could charge anything I want. No municipality, be it city, county, state, or federal, could tell me what I charge for the land. Okay? But those are the things that these residents are being told. The problem is the residents aren't getting the full picture. They talked about the 47,000 residents in Poinciana. 26 or 27,000 that are actually registered. That's about 61, 62%. But it gets even worse. Of those 27%, in the presidential election, which has a higher voter turnout than a non-presidential election, only 23% of that 27,000 came out to vote. A little less than 7,000. In a non-presidential election, which this will be done if you agree to let this go to a vote, will be in a non-presidential year. Senator Soto, you and I discussed this. You were a little harder than me. You said 16 to 17%. I said, let's make it 20. It's also easier on the math in my head. I'm a little old. Okay? 20% of the registered voters, so that's 5,000 to 6,000, let's say 6,000 residents, will actually vote in the election for Poinciana to become a city. 3,001 vote yes, and that affects, that's less than 10%. 10% of the residents are going to have the say on the destiny of 90% of the residents of Poinciana. Okay? The full 7,000 voted all you into office. That's a little better representation. And we live in a republic which says that we elect you to make these decisions for us. Okay? There's nothing in the Constitution that says that we, the people, get to vote on every single item. That's the whole idea of being a republic. So I'm concerned that 3,000 residents will affect 47,000 residents and put a charge that they're going to have to pay and live with for as long as they live in Poinciana. In conclusion, okay, I'm concerned about the financial viability. This feasibility study, which doesn't look like anything like the 2009 one, and I know the 2009 one very well. I was the guy who stood up here in 2009 and defeated that feasibility study with both Osceola and Polk delegations. I read through that many times, sat with many people on the committee, our committee, to come up with the faults in it. Okay? This one doesn't look anything like it. This one doesn't even say that it's feasible. All it does is say we can replace the APV. All those things that they say that they're going to have interlocal agreements with for road maintenance, this, that, we know that the police will cover, but road maintenance? Okay? The right-of-ways, the mowing of the right-of-ways, yeah, the county, Osceola pays $90,000. The fact that the HOA does more than what the $90,000 pays for, that's their decision. I'm concerned that the feasibility of financial feasibility isn't there. And why am I concerned? Because, as it's been mentioned, I don't live in Poinciana, but I'm involved in Poinciana more than some of these people are. I'm on the board for the Y of Poinciana. I'm on the board for the Boys and Girls Club of Poinciana. Okay? I am a member of the Poinciana Area Council. I'm a member of the Poinciana Economic Development Alliance. I was a charter member and past president of the Rotary Club of Kissimmee South Poinciana. I probably donate more money into groups into Poinciana, including the Christmas parade, that I don't even go. Now, I went to last year, but usually I don't go to because I don't live in Poinciana and the traffic is just too bad, more than most of these people. I'm concerned what's going to happen to the Y and the Boys and Girls Club if this becomes a city. That is why I'm concerned. That's why I'm here. They don't talk about what's going to happen to the parks. The county owns the parks now. In the Palm Coast study, which happens to be the model study according to the Florida League of Cities, they dealt with the parks issue. They said right in the feasibility study that they made an agreement with the county that the county would hold on to the parks for 2 years until Palm Coast could raise the money to take over the parks. Okay? We talked about the budget that they put in there. They took right from the APV budget. Well, there's something that's missing in that budget because now the parks in Poinciana are owned by the counties, not like it was the year before. So now they're going to have to add insurance. Okay? It's not in there. Okay? Basically, that is why I'm concerned about this. This is not, they have not proved that it's feasibly sound to be a city. All they've proved is that it's feasibly sound to replace an APV, which isn't going to go away anyway. And the residents are going to find out after the fact. That 3 millage rate, they're right. That's just for the purpose of the feasibility study, but they're selling that to the residents. Okay? The city council will decide on the, and they're going to be in for sticker shock when they find out that what's going to make it work is going to be something closer to 5 or 6 millage. Okay? Thank you for your time. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Members, are there any questions? Senator Soto.
Mr. Goldmacher, that was a very sharp presentation, and you bring up a lot of wonderful debate points. The issue before us is whether or not people should get the right to vote on this or not. So don't you think that should just be a debate that folks have? And I guess my question is, why shouldn't we give the residents of Poinciana at least the option to vote on it and turn it down or actually have a city?
Basically, you're right. Okay? If the turnout in Poinciana for elections were a higher percentage. Osceola County, it's 63%. Poinciana alone is only 23%. It was closer, and you had more residents participating. It's shame on those that don't. But if you had more participants. This last election, there were less than 7,000 people in Poinciana that actually came out to vote. So you're telling me if we get the same 7%, and you and I both agree it's going to be less than that, well, let's use that same 7,000, 3,500 people, 3,501 person. is going to decide the future for 47,000 residents? Okay, 7,000 at least elected you. Okay, that's a little better percentage. Not a great percentage, but a little better percentage. Okay, if Poinciana's percentage was closer to what the average for Osceola County is, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I would fight and promote and market not becoming a city, but yeah, let them go. But not when it's such a small amount of people that are actually going to come out to vote, and such a small amount of people that will actually have a say for 90% of the residents. Less than 10% of the residents are going to make this a city, and 90% are going to be stuck. They talk about, yes, they have put it, it's been in the ledger. Well, half the community that lives in Osceola doesn't read the ledger. It was in 2 lines in the Osceola News Gazette once in the meeting. There's no real reach out, no community. They have a website, but there's no blog on there for people to go back and forth and discuss things. Okay? They've had 2 meetings, 2 big meetings, of 150 people each. One back in the beginning, and one just recently with Representative La Rosa. Okay? But it's the same 150 people. As a matter of fact, I was standing in the back during that meeting, and towards the end, there was about 6 or 7 people that walked in, sat at the back table, and all they said is, they didn't hear about this. They happened to be driving by and saw the cars, so they stopped in to see what was going on. Okay? There's been no real reach out. There's a lot of people out there that don't have a clue that this is going on. There's a lot of people out there that don't have all the facts. That feasibility study at 35 pages is a third what the feasibility study was in Poinciana in 2009. It's about the 10th of the Palm Coast study. Those gave the facts. The facts in the UCF study back in 2009 might have been wrong, but they at least listed all the facts and hit all the points.
Follow up. Now, there is no bill yet because of the fact that we as a delegation wanted to hear from everybody. There's no bill being voted on today. In fact, everybody's going to have input. Wouldn't the residents be voting on a bill that eventually came out of it if it happened to go through the process? And the feasibility study is more just facts for them to assess that bill. So wouldn't that be the real issue of what the bill looks like as far as what's included and whatnot? What they're doing is a presentation.
Right. The bill is actually the charter. That is what Governor Scott will actually get to sign. Okay, that's the bill. The feasibility study, here's the funny thing. A feasibility study is to determine if something's feasible. Once you decide if it's feasible or not, then you decide to go ahead with a charter. They had a charter and the feasibility study running parallel to each other. Okay? They know because they were going to make it feasible no matter what. This feasibility study doesn't have all the facts in it.
Right. I understand that there's a debate over the feasibility, and you make some very good points, but the folks would be Poinciana residents would be voting on a bill. It would have to originate out of the House, out of one of these 2 gentlemen. And 3. Sorry. Oh, my gosh.
I don't have a dog in this. I'm here.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So the residents would be voting on the actual charter that came out of a bill that has not been drafted yet out of concern for citizen input first before anything was drafted. They wouldn't be voting on a feasibility study, isn't that?
No, they're not voting on a feasibility study, but they're being asked to use the feasibility study to make their decision.
And I understand that.
Okay? And a feasibility study doesn't do it.
And I understand your
and the
point.
The charter's not a bad charter. Do I agree with a strong city mayor versus a manager? That's another whole argument. That's their decision to make. The charter's not bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. That's just proposals. Whatever bill does or does not come out of this delegation would take that into consideration, but that doesn't necessarily have to be what it is. It would be a bill that would originate from this delegation, ultimately based upon input today. That would actually be the bill. The last thing is, we don't know what a city council would do, even when we're talking about this feasibility study. It would be the Poinciana residents would vote on their city commissioners. Heck, it could be you one day.
No, I don't live in Poinciana.
That's right. But and so a lot of this feasibility issues, we can't ever with a certainty predict what a city council would eventually do. They could serve for free. They could serve for $50,000. They could take on these services and that's it. They could take on a lot of other things. And so in the end, we're still dealing with, there's always going to be some uncertainty about what a city council would do, but they'd be voted on by the people. So
Yes.
my ultimate point is, no matter what you do in a feasibility study or not, there's uncertainty because no one can predict what a city council is going to do.
Exactly. Nobody can predict the future. There's no crystal ball that says this is what they're going to do, this is what they're going to decide. They might decide, hey, you know what, we're going to raise everybody to 10 mil. You know, at the rollback, I think that's the max that the state can charge. And we want to have our own police force. Okay, they could decide that. That's their decision. But a feasibility study is to determine if something's feasible based on a certain set of facts. This feasibility study hasn't determined that anything is feasible for this community to become a city. All it's decided on was it's feasible that we can replace the APV, and that way we have people that all the residents vote on, okay? They used the example of Village 7, how Avatar, AV Homes, the developer, let's call them the developer because they've had a couple of names, had 1,500 votes, so they got to pick who was going to be the president of that village. And they mentioned that Keith's son got 14 votes and somebody else got 10 votes, but because Avatar got, the developer had 1,500 votes, they decided to pick. But look at all the homes down in Village 7, okay? And there were only 21 residents that came out to vote. Now, were the times suitable? No, okay, I'll agree there was a problem. But look at the general election. And we have early voting, we have absentee voting, and then we have election day, and only 7,000 residents in all of Poinciana came out to vote. Okay? There's not enough people that actually participate to make this decision.
My last question. There's nothing stopping everybody from coming out and voting, though, right?
Excuse me?
There's nothing stopping everybody from coming out and voting.
Nope,
You're just
there's
talking
nothing
about,
that's stopping it. But look at the history.
You have a concern that there may not be a lot of turnout, but all that 60% of the folks who are registered could vote if they wanted to, though.
Yes, and shame on them for not coming out. I'm looking at the history. 20%. That's it.
Right.
Okay? That's all I could go by, and that's more feasible than anything that they put in that feasibility study.
Representative Rangel.
Thank you, Chairman. Sir, thank you for coming out and doing your presentation. Very informative. Just to piggyback a little bit on what Senator Soto was talking about, even if it is 10%, that's the great thing about our democracy. Whether it's 5 people who get to vote or whether it's 1 million people to get to vote, but there's a process in place. And I think that's important. If the people want to be able to go out there and say, well, you know what, we want to become a city, and there's not enough people that came out to vote no, then we can't really blame that. Just like, for example, let's say only 10,000 people came out to vote for governor. Does that mean the vote didn't count because not enough people came out? No, it's the people had the opportunity to do so. So I think that's important too.
Well, let's pick up on one of the words you said. There's a process. And the process is that we're a republic, and we elect you to make these decisions for us. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the residents have a right to vote on this. We elect you to make these decisions for us. And we elect you to not only take the information that Mr. Ramos and Mr. Latham gave you, not just to take the information that I gave you, but the information that Rebecca gets, your staff member, well, he's not sitting there anymore, gets, and all your experts and all the committees of staff up in Tallahassee to put together to make a decision, a proper decision, an educated decision. The residents of Poinciana, even those 7,000, are not getting the right information. They're getting information that's slanted.
To kind of round out what Mr. Goldmacher is saying is that it seems to me that the information necessary that we get on every bill we vote on has a backbone, has an understanding, has some structure to it. And correct me if I'm wrong, where your issues are is that information just isn't here today.
Yeah, that information isn't in the feasibility study because basically they didn't have somebody that's done feasibility studies like UCF. They did a bad feasibility study, but there are other companies out there that do good feasibility studies. These were a couple of gentlemen who sat down over a kitchen table and came up with a feasibility study. Okay, they got some help from the Florida League of Cities, they got some help from a law firm. But these aren't people that normally do feasibility studies. Otherwise, they would have had something close to what the last one was or the Palm Coast study is. You have staff up in Tallahassee. It's sitting in 3 committees right now, okay, studying this and dissecting it. And you're going to get reports back from them. These residents are only getting the words from the pro-incorporation people or myself, okay? We're not experts. We don't do this. This is second time around for me, so I'm getting a little better at it. But if I want to come out of retirement, I might go to Tallahassee to get a job to look at these things. But basically, you have more resources than the residents down here. One of the biggest complaints on this last ballot was, and the supervised election put all those amendments on there. No, it was just too confusing. Okay, and now you're asking the residents to read, understand a document that doesn't have all the information to begin with, a 32-page document, and to make a decision if it's good enough, if it's good for them. In the last 9 months, under the new management of the homeowners association, they've done more than the last 40 years. They have, and they're looking to present more. You ask them how long, why this just only came up. Remember, they only got hired in February. The board only meets every other month. So in August, they asked to do a feasibility study to do this, and then in October they presented it. That was pretty quick to come up with those type of plans. Things are happening in Poinciana. Yes, residents always have to get involved and be involved. Look at all the community boards that sit on the county level. Code enforcement, the Expressway Authority. Those are all volunteers. Residents always have to get involved to get something done. And I think Poinciana, we have some really good residents that really work hard and got things.
Senator Soto has a question.
The reason I asked that question is pretty obvious. I was concerned that it took the threat of a potential city for some of these improvements to happen.
I know exactly where you're going with that. I know that. And that's why I'm trying to clear it up. They just came in February. Oh, January, the first meeting in February, okay? It takes a while to get something started, okay? But that was the push. For the first time, the HOA doesn't have homegrown people running it, okay? Mr. Ramos, who's worked for them for 22, 24 years, he started out in Parks and Recreation. He's homegrown. Okay? These guys have 1,800 HOAs that they have much, and they know what they can do. They're bringing in a marketing to rebrand Poinciana, okay? Okay, and see, and this is part of the problem, and this is why, and in the emails that go back and forth, I'm being attacked all the time because I don't live in the area, but I'm here coming out. That's why the residents that have asked me to represent them don't even want to come, because this is very militant. They're ripping the community apart just like they did in 2009. Okay, they sent out an email and handed it out. I had residents call me and tell me it was on in their mailboxes, attacking both me and Solovita for going against this. People are afraid to come out and speak. You're going to get some people that are brave enough to come out and speak today on this. But this ripped apart the community in 2009. They made it a race and a class. And now they're just making it a class. And that's the problem with this side.
Let's transition into to that portion of our meeting where we have public testimony.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Goldmacher. I don't think anyone up here can say that he's not passionate about the issue. Thank you for bringing the passion forward today. Just as a reminder, our next participants that are public speakers.